Guardian. So, Tyler, the Guardian now is buffed in terms of price. It's reduced from 2,700 to 2,500. The rate of fire has been reduced, however, from 6.5 to 4.75. But for me, the big one there is the penetration power increased from medium to heavy, so a lot more wall bang for your buck there with the Guardian. Now, do you feel with these changes, Tyler, that we're going to see the Guardian selected a lot more in competitive?
No, I don't at all, really. I feel like if you're going to go for penetration, you would just go for either the cheap option of Ares or you just go full Sinatra and Odin. I feel like it's trying to at least separate it from the Vandal and the Phantom, lowering the price to make it feel less of a heavy buy. It's a more a long-range one-tap gun now, like as it was intended before, but now even the burst is slower. It's very much a situational gun, so which I don't mind. I think that some players might find some edges with it, and I'm excited to see what happens to it, right? Like, I don't believe it's gonna be meta. It's not gonna be like a Vandal or a Phantom or an operator where you're gonna see that in every single game, almost every single round. But we've seen Sinatra pick up the Odin, kind of make that his own gun, make that kind of his and Sentinel's style, right? So maybe we'll see some players or a team kind of make the Guardian fit with their playstyle. So I want to see actual pros play with the Guardian. I've not really ever played it. I like, praying and spraying. So we'll see how it goes. I'm not super sold on it, but I want to see if some pros can figure out a way to use it that we haven't thought of.
Simo, what do you think? Do you think that we're going to see a lot more Guardian in play?
I think I have to agree with Tyler. It all depends on who ends up picking it up. It might be one of those things where players are a little afraid to pick it up. From what I've seen in the NA scene is that there's a little fear to have innovation. Players are playing standard meta and they're not really looking to play outside of that. We saw Sentinels earlier this weekend really play outside of what we consider or feel like is the meta. And so, like Tyler was saying, it's just going to take one player to make waves and make that adaptation to use that weapon. But realistically, what I feel Riot is doing is they're just trying to separate it from the Vandal and the Phantom, similar to what Tyler said. And to do that, I mean, you obviously have to change the weapon, but they're also changing the price. And I think that cost is really the biggest and most important thing, because considering how expensive the Vandal and the Phantom may be, the Guardian's now a little cheaper, and it might be a little bit more closer in contention with, let's say, the Bulldog, but more of like a one-hitter quitter type weapon.
I mean, it's a fun weapon, and I thought ever since the game came out, like, there were moments when it was, like, enjoyable, but it was really weak. It was probably one of the lowest bought weapons in the game. I, like, very rarely saw it. Moreover, too, like, I still think it's not as good as the Bulldog, just, like, first impression, right? Like, I think the Bulldog, especially, and the price is not so different, right? Like, there's a lot of difference between, and I understand, it's 400 gold now, less than the Vandal and the Phantom. It's 400 gold more than the Bulldog. But, like, how often are you going to have 2,500 gold just sitting there, or, like, 2,500 to buy, right? Like, it is, I would much rather buy a Spectre or a Bulldog or an Ares and, like, wait it out, right? And then, like, have a better eco later in the game than I would, or, like, if I had the money, just go ahead and invest in the Vandal or the Phantom. The gold change is big because now there is like a world where it is potentially bought, but I don't think it's so marginal that it is, and I don't think the gun is so much better than the Bulldog that it necessarily demands the fact that like it's worth that extra 400 if you have it.
Simo?
Like if you're on the seams, I mean, like if you literally have like just enough money, right? Like
sure.
I think what we're learning, especially with competitive Valorant, is that realistically anything is possible. Players have to make the decision, especially at the higher upper echelon of competitive Valorant. Okay, I've got X amount of credits to spend. What am I going to spend it on? And that's why you're seeing in certain cases a round 2 Phantom, which is at the beginning of the beta really unheard of. Players really just opting in for the classic, no utility, and then the first round they win the pistol. Well, what do you know? Now I can afford a Phantom. I still don't need the utility. The other team doesn't have utility. And so you might find yourself in the situation where, okay, well, what if I can't afford a Phantom or a Vandal? Do I go for the Bulldog? Do I go for the Spectre? The Guardian just now became an option, and it is up to the players to decide on that option. While I agree with you, we probably won't see it for quite some time. It is now just an additional option in which there wasn't one before.
I do like the features of the Guardian. I like that it's become a heavy. I do like the what is it called? ADS.
Yes.
Yeah, I do
Yes.
like the zoom in on the ADS, right? Like it's further than most other guns. You would get that sort of zoom in with the Guardian as opposed to the Phantom or the Vandal, for example. However, I guess what I'm wondering is how many people. It's going to take a while to experiment with the Guardian such that you would choose it deliberately over a Vandal or a Phantom.
I think the only reason
you know what I mean.
I think the only reason you would though is the range, right? And that's what they emphasized in the patch notes was
Long
the
range.
fact that it is a long range weapon, right? Like in some ways it is very similar to the lower cost sniper also in that
Sure,
sense, right?
sure.
It does it is a headshot weapon. If you are like fairly pinpoint accurate on a pixel level, like it definitely has a place in your heart for being long range and cheap. Like this is something that I feel like a player holding holding a mid in any of the maps, honestly, like holding the mid position is something worth maybe potentially picking up. But like, and I'm sure like with this change, we will see it more in lower elo, like
Well, that's
indefinitely.
what I was saying. Yeah,
right, like
that's my thing. Is that lower elo? I've seen plenty of people lurk through showers and pick off somebody in heaven, right? On bind. I get that part, but what I'm saying is like at the competitive level. I just don't see how a Guardian would stack up against someone who's got an op with no utilities or anything. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel
no,
like...
you're just gonna die. Like
Right, especially when you're playing at competitive. Pubs, get it. Competitive, I wonder if the Guardian's going to penetrate there. I don't know.
It'll take time. It's going to take experimentation. It's just another kind of factor thrown in, right? Like, you want to have as much variety as possible. I am sure a team or a player will figure out the Guardian, and then we will see that spread out and evolution of how Sinatra is doing with the Odin. It'll be interesting. I like the change. It changes up. It makes it different from the Vandal and Phantom. And that whole warfare. Guardian was never. It's a good change. It brings more variety to the game. It makes it a different type of gun. So I'm all in. Good job.